This is a production of KMmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show, very, very important conversation around a topic that I think a lot of people would like to bet some more information on, and that is sleep. And we've got a wonderful coach here and somebody that is really gifted at that. And we're going to talk to her in just a moment. But first, I have to talk to my friend, Nathan. How are you, sir?
Whoa, is there a radio show going on? Oh, sorry. Whoa, sorry. I was sleeping there.
Very nice. I'm glad. See, you're young. You could probably sleep at the drop of a hat. When you get a little older or you're a baby, that we're going to talk about both today, it becomes a little bit more of a problem.
Yeah, it can be. I've noticed that a few times. I actually just recently got a new pillow because I'm feeling like maybe my neck has been a little bit stiff in the morning, just part of getting old. So changed my pillow to a memory foam out of a typical whatever normal pillow, and been working wonders.
Good. You didn't buy it from that pillow guy, did you?
No.
Yeah, good.
Good old Costco.
Costco's a good place to go do that kind of thing and stuff. So, by the way, I'm hearing that it's cold. I don't get to go outside much because I'm on restriction, but I'm hearing that it's cold. Are we going to get snow at all?
It's a little bit rain and snow mix is in the forecast, but I mean, if you're outside and you're in the sun, it's going to be warm. Very sunny day today, but if you get into a place that's maybe shielded for the sun or in shade, then it is going to be quite chilly.
Yeah, indeed it is. It's cold, and I'm hoping that we're almost into March, so I'm hoping that will all improve over time. And I'm really excited about our show today because we've got a young lady with us who has been through the war. Her second child. Can you imagine? Now you don't have any kids yet, do you?
Nope, just a Roomba. Seems like a kid sometimes.
I would just think about this. You have a baby. And first of all, when you have a baby, you don't get like a week off to recover and stuff. All of a sudden, it's like the next day that baby is there. Can you imagine if your child woke up 12 times a night, every night for 5 months? Could you imagine what that would do to you?
I have a niece who just turned 1, so I know all the stories of, a mother with a very young child is a 24/7 never-ending job.
And never sleeping job in some cases, because kids have to learn how to do all that. And our coach today, she is a gentle sleep coach, and we're going to ask her all about that. Andrea Moore is with us. Andrea, how are you today? And thank you for being here. And I'm glad you survived.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me here. I'm well rested today.
That's good. Well, you are rested now, but there was a point in time. And by the way, I highly suggest that everybody go to her website, which is blissfulnights.ca. And she's got some free videos there, and you can look at that. And she's got classes, and she's got, you can work with her one-on-one, because as we discussed in our previous talk together, sleep is kind of an important part of our lives, isn't it?
Just a little bit. Kind of changes everything.
Well, and it's just as important, they say now, whoever they are, that it's as important as eating and getting, having a good mental attitude and all of those things. Sleep plays into that a great deal, doesn't it?
Oh, sleep plays into our physical health, our emotional well-being, our mental well-being. It pretty much impacts us in all areas of life.
And what was it like having your child and knowing that your child was going to get up 10 to 12 times that night, every night?
Yeah, that was ridiculously hard. I was hit with postpartum depression and anxiety very early on, likely within the first week. I remember in that that first 8 days, he slept about 1 hour per 24-hour period. And by day 8, I was hallucinating. I tried to go up the street for a walk and I almost blacked out walking across the road. I had to turn around and just go back home. I had nothing. And it got slightly better than that, but it was still very broken sleep for many months. We would be awakened every 20 minutes to 45 minutes. Occasionally, we would get a 90-minute stretch.
Oh man, that must have felt like we've made it. I got 90 whole minutes.
It's amazing how refreshing 90 minutes feels when you only get that once a month.
and the poor little guy, he broke his clavicle during the birth and all of that. So he had a rough beginning. How's he doing today, by the way?
He's doing fantastic today. He's a great sleeper now, easily 11 hours at night. He's 8 years old, and he's one of my greatest little teachers. All my kids are, but he is the reason that I made this switch and why I do what I do now, because I remember that time when life solely revolved around getting just 1 hour of sleep. If my mom could come over and hold him for an hour just so I could try to sleep in the daytime, everything was consumed with just needing to sleep. I had no energy to function. And just knowing the process of getting him to sleep, there's so much anxiety knowing that evening was coming and what I was heading into.
Well, now you are an educated woman and you were doing things before this. What did you do before this?
Yeah, so my background is in psychology, social work fields, and right before switching into pediatric sleep, I worked at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and before that, I worked at Canadian Mental Health Association.
Oh wow! So you've been in and around mental health and the effects that sleep has on your mental health for like a long time.
Absolutely. The focus was definitely more mental health, but since branching out into pediatric sleep, I did a lot more training on infant mental health and breastfeeding and just really understanding early childhood development, because there's so many vulnerable periods of development little ones go through in the first couple of years of life. If we're doing any kind of coaching or setting boundaries where there could be emotions happening with that, I want to make sure that we're supporting a baby or a child through that.
What is it like for the little one? I realize it was really hard on you, but what was it like for him not being able to get the rest that he needed as well?
I think he was getting rest. So, in the first year of life, a lot of babies do have somewhat more broken sleep. His situation was a bit more extreme than a lot, but it's often the parents who wake up more fully to get the baby back to sleep. And we either stay awake by holding them or keeping them asleep. So, we're staying awake and they're being helped back to sleep over and over. And one of the reasons it impacts us more is our sleep cycle is longer. An adult sleep cycle is closer to 90 minutes, whereas a baby's is about 40 to 50 minutes. So if we're awakened every 45 minutes, we've only made it halfway through a sleep cycle.
Uh-huh. I understand. I've been there. I do that occasionally. Make it through an entire sleep cycle. But I got to applaud you because this was your middle child, right?
That's right.
Well, you actually had another one. So that, I applaud you for continuing that process because I would have been like, no, he ain't going through that again.
Yeah, it took a good 6, 7 months of solid sleep before that thought could even enter my mind again.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here, and because sleep is such a big deal, I wanted to have you talk about it and all of its relationships to. Now, you specialize in pediatric sleep for the young ones, but it also affects older folks, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I work with babies and young children up to about the age of 6 or 7, but our little ones, if they're not sleeping well, then we're not sleeping well as parents. And the symptoms of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety are almost identical to the symptoms of extreme sleep deprivation.
I was talking with a young lady just the other day, and she had postpartum depression, which, by the way, I think is a much bigger deal than we make it out to be. And many more people have it, and stuff. And prescribed, so I can't remember, it was a long name, and I can't remember the medication they gave her, but they prescribed this medication that had severe withdrawal attached to it. So they gave her this and didn't tell her about that until after she'd been on the medication for a while. Do you is medicating someone with postpartum depression a good idea, or what do you think?
So I'm not a doctor to advise on this, but I feel
You've
like
got the experience, though.
very true, very true. So I was also offered medication for the postpartum depression and anxiety that I was experiencing, but it intuitively did not feel like the best choice for me because I knew that it stemmed from sleep deprivation. And I knew if I could resolve the sleep challenges, I would likely feel better. And once I figured out a way to do that that didn't involve just leaving my baby alone to cry, which also intuitively did not feel right, within a month of that, my symptoms started to ease.
Why is it that, and I know friends and family they're out after our best good, and they've got advice for us, and they want us to get the best advice. Why is it that a lot of people say, well, you're just going to have to let that baby cry?
I think that was like generationally, that was what was most advised in our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation. And so the two answers to this. One, Google was not so, well, it wasn't available at all in those generations. So they would sit with their baby more. They'd spend more time tapping into their intuition and what is my baby telling me, and reading cues and observing them and learning through trial and error. Whereas now I think we're so quick to jump on Google, my baby's fussing, what do I do? Without taking that time to really just sit with them. And the root emotion of tired is frustration. It's not a fun feeling to be tired. If we think about how we feel when we're tired, sometimes we might need to cry. Little ones will express frustration through some tears. And we went from just leave your baby to cry to the opposite end of being scared to let our babies ever cry. And that's like saying it's not okay for our babies ever to feel uncomfortable emotions, which it's unrealistic. It's setting ourselves up as for failure as parents if we expect to keep them in this happy little bubble all the time. They're going to feel tired, they're going to feel frustrated, they're going to feel mad. Life isn't always going to go their way. And it's okay to feel these uncomfortable feelings too. There's a place for those emotions. We don't need to send the message, nope, don't feel tired. Look at something shiny. Let's go eat chocolate in a pantry. We can all learn those coping strategies later in life. It's okay to feel it. Sometimes it's understanding, yeah, they're tired. It's nap time. Of course they're tired. Or it's bedtime. They're fussing or a bit of crying. That would be a normal expression for babies. We can support them through that, sending that energy of, yeah, I'm here with you. This is tired. We've got this, as opposed to going into panic mode. Oh no, my baby's crying. Something's wrong. It's my responsibility. I'm only a good parent if I can fix this. Sometimes offering support and love and comfort, but letting them feel whatever they're feeling is the best thing that we can offer them.
That's really sound advice. I remember when we had our first child, and he's to this day, he's 34, and he's still very stubborn. And so he was a stubborn baby. And when he didn't want to go to sleep, there he was not going to go to sleep. So I distinctly remember we were told by both of our parents that well, just gotta let him cry it out. Just let him cry it out. So so we were cowering on our bed as he was screaming in the next room for like 30 minutes before we finally relented and said, this kid is a lot stronger than we are, so he's going to keep crying for like ever and stuff. So, but by the time we had our second kid, it was like, yeah, just let him cry, he'll be fine. So
And some crying is a useful function. Like when we release tears of frustration, anger, sadness, something doesn't go our way, we're really irritable. When we release tears that stem from those emotions, there are actually toxins released in our tears. There are stress hormones released. We get a boost of oxytocin after. It's healthy to let those emotions out through some tears and to let our babies do some of that too. The other type of crying, so that's what we would call tension release crying. So letting those emotions out. The other type of crying, which we do want to avoid, is something called tension increase crying. This is when a baby or a young child has gone beyond their own ability to regulate, and they're no longer showing signs of trying to work through whatever emotion is that they're feeling. And when we go into that stage, and it's more likely to go here with younger babies, so under 6 months, we're more likely to cross that line. But this is when a baby's stress response could be activated. They're potentially in fight, flight, or freeze. They don't learn from this stage. This is survival mode. So it's not productive to go there with coaching. But I feel like most parents don't get the knowledge or the education on what those two different types of crying look like. And one of the biggest keys to determining the difference between the types of crying is watching body language. What is that baby doing with their body when they're crying? Because if they're feeling a big emotion and trying to work through it, that's a good thing. We want to encourage that. That's learning emotional regulation. We want to cheer them on, offer support. We don't want to jump in and interrupt that process. So when a baby is crying and exhibiting a lot of body language, so they could be thumping their legs, moving their head back and forth, arms might be going all over the place. As they progress in motor skills, you might see a baby sitting up, laying down, crawling around the crib, standing up, doing gymnastics everywhere. It does not look like an adult trying to fall asleep. So get that image out of your mind. Babies are very mobile. That feeling of being tired is an uncomfortable feeling within the body, and they try to work through that feeling by moving their bodies.
See, my oldest son wanted to move out of the house when he was like 18 months old because he got tired of us. And he was thinking I could be on my own because his was and literally was an angry cry. If he didn't get what he wanted, he was just pissed. I mean, really angry.
I I can empathize with that. I have 3 0 to 100 kids with the big emotions. I call them wonderfully spirited. And this is more a temperament trait. So it's not necessarily the volume or intensity of the crying that tells us if it's tension release crying or tension increase crying. That more comes down to temperament. There are probably some adults you might be able to think of who express themselves more loudly than others, and little ones are the same. And for little ones who go from 0 to 100 quickly over everything, they're not distressed every 5 minutes. They're just letting us know very clearly, I don't like that. That bothered me. And they can feel that feeling of being tired somewhat more intensely. It bothers them more than it might their easygoing counterpart.
So, if somebody would like to talk to you and like to work with you, what does that look like? Because I know that you've obviously, and by the way, go to blissfulnights.ca and you can find out all the information about her. But if somebody has a problem with a child and their sleep patterns are disrupted, and I got another one for you. So when we get this out, we'll talk about that. Um, but how do you help them? What's it look like when you work with someone?
Usually, what I do is I start with a free introductory phone call just to get a feel for what their needs are. And I do have two different streams of support. So, one is personal support, where they fill out a history assessment, 7-page form, gives me a full picture of their little one, age, stage of development, their history, their routine, their sleep environment, temperament, as well as their goals. I always work to help a parent meet their goals, not my own. And then I do write up a plan. I write it out night by night. Although 80% chance a little one is not going to follow a plan as laid out. They're all individual little humans. I expect them to go about it in their own way. And that's okay. I don't do cookie cutter plans and say, just stick to it no matter what. We use the plan more as a guideline or a starting point. We try it out. Once we see how the little one reacts, how they feel about it, we make changes and adjustments as we go. They also have access to my video library. So I do have them watch about 45 minutes worth of videos before we work together. And the videos cover sleep shaping topics, which is just understanding how sleep works, how to set up a sleep-inducing environment, how to figure out their little one's schedule, no templates. I want to teach parents how to figure out their own baby's schedule so that they can adapt it as their baby grows. And then we have a 1-hour consult, usually over Zoom, where I walk them through the steps of their sleep plan. We talk a lot about emotional regulation and how to tell the different types of crying and how to tailor their response to the different types of crying or fussing. So there's no sit in a chair. You're only allowed to respond after 8 minutes or 15 minutes. Some babies mildly fuss or suck on their toes and fingers for 20 minutes. They don't need intervention. They're doing fine.
I wish I could do
that. Yeah, that's a special talent when we could get those toes in the mouth.
I'm not nearly that flexible anymore, but that would be nice. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
Oh, that's okay. So some little ones go from 0 to 100 a lot more quickly. So we're not going to wait 10 minutes for the little one who is escalating really quickly. We're going to offer support sooner rather than later for those ones. And the other ones who are fine with a bit more space and playing with their body parts as they fall asleep, they're okay for a little bit longer. And then we increase the challenge level as the baby rises to that challenge. So we might start out with in-arms coaching, getting them comfortable falling asleep with a lower level of help, but a high level of support. When they're doing great there, then we ask them to do it on a flat surface. So nothing's cold turkey. And usually over the course of a week and a half to 2 weeks, we've either reached our night goals or we're about 80 to 90% of the way there.
That's got to make people feel really encouraged if they can see positive signs.
Absolutely. And I've worked with well over 1,500 little ones through this process. So sometimes I can pull out the positives. Like, this is great. Your little one fell asleep in 28 minutes. It felt like a long 28 minutes, but that means it wasn't even a huge challenge what we asked them to do. If they're falling asleep in 30 minutes or less, that's a sign that they're coping really well.
Oh, that's good. By the way, if you'd like to give us a call, Nathan, are you there, sir?
Yes, Kevin, I'm here.
First of all, I want to know, you're younger than I am. Can you suck on your toes?
Can I? I'm not sure if I can do that anymore. It's been a while since I tried.
If somebody would like to give us a call, what numbers do they use?
They can give us a call at 425-373-5527. And we also have a toll-free phone number at 1-888-298-5569. And if you're joining us on the YouTube or Facebook stream, you can see that on your screen as well. Just write it down, put it in your speed dial, and give us a call. 425-373-5527 or toll-free 888-298-5569.
And we're talking with Andrea Moore, and she is a gentle sleep coach. She helps young ones, and the people that are associated with the young ones all have a restful night's sleep. Because I imagine that when you do your work and baby's doing better and mom and dad are getting more rest, the entire stress level of the house goes down.
Absolutely. And when we as parents are in a calm, regulated space, our children tend to behave better. It's usually when we're stressed that all hell breaks loose and they have the bigger behaviors or the bigger emotions. In the first few years of life, babies and young children, they don't self-soothe or self-regulate, they co-regulate. So that means they learn emotional regulation with a parent close by or a caregiver close by offering presence and able to stay as calm, non-reactive, and loving as possible. And I know easier said than done.
Good point. No kidding. But after the break, I want to talk to you about my youngest son, who has got a 4-year-old child, and she's quote unquote what they call on the spectrum. And I want to talk about that a little bit because I think that there are a lot and lots of little ones that are on the spectrum in some manner or form. And I think it's important that we understand what they're going through in their world. And I know that you've had experience with that as well.
Absolutely.
Very good. We're talking again with Andrea Moore, and she is a sleep coach. And she worked with. Oh, before we go, I got to ask you about Kim West. I'm unfamiliar with her. Tell me about her.
Kim is the wonderful human who started the Gentle Sleep Coach organization. So she started this. I don't have the exact number of how many years ago, but I think it's been at least a couple of decades. So she's one of the leaders in the fields of pediatric sleep. And she started offering parents other methods other than cry it out. And what I loved about her training program was it included breastfeeding and looking into medical issues that might be impacting sleep and early childhood development. There is so much more to her training than a lot of the comparable options out there. And she's such a wonderful support in creating a beautiful community of gentle sleep coaches across the world with such a wide variety of backgrounds and expertise to come together and help parents get better sleep.
Yes, indeed. And then when we come back, because we're going to take a break, we're going to talk about my granddaughter. And I also want to mention the fact that you mentioned breastfeeding and that there are some things that you can do to make it a little bit more comfortable for both mom and baby. Because my poor wife, when her youngest son, he was what we would call a vacuum sucker, and he had a lot of power behind him, and it hurt. It hurt a lot. But there are things that you can do to help with that, I do believe. So when we come back, we'll talk about all of that. Stay with us. By the way, we're talking with Andrea Moore. She's a sleep coach, blissfulnights.ca. Go there. And if you need help, don't wait. You're missing a good night's sleep. You can get that if you talk to her. So we will be right back after these messages. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio right here on KKNW, 1150 AM. Hey there. I'm excited that you're listening right now, and if you like what we're doing here, you're going to love positivetalkradio.net. On positivetalkradio.net, each show, which is recorded live, is packed with positive information, with real people discussing real issues, and positive solutions that can work for everyone. I hope that you'll join us on positivetalkradio.net and listen to all 340 plus shows. I think it's worth your time. But then, that's just me. That's positivetalkradio.net, your home for great progressive, positive podcasts.
When you want to say more than words communicate, you can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, my friend. I'd really like to thank you for listening to the show today. As you may know, I started Positive Talk Radio way back in 2003. We were one of the first shows on KKNW. For 11 months, I was fortunate to be part of many lives, making a positive difference with great interviews and discussions, creating new thoughts and ideas. Sadly, For financial reasons, I had to terminate the show. Well, it took 18 years, but we're back better than ever. And not only on KKNW Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but also podcasting with several inspiring channels with the same driving passion as the original. Please visit kmmedia.pro for complete information about all of these shows. In addition, if you feel called to keep positive programming on the air, you can join us by sponsoring the show and aligning yourself with our mission, which is nothing short of saving the planet and each other. Again, that's kmmedia.pro. I'll see you there. And welcome back, everybody, to Positive Talk Radio. My name is Kevin McDonald. Andrea Moore is there. She's a gentle sleep coach. She is the gentle sleep coach, I must say. And she works with folks all over the world. She lives in Canada, which is why her website is blissfulnights.ca. But you can pick up the phone and you can give her a call, or you can email her, and she'd be happy to help you get through some of the issues that you have so that you can improve sleep. But before we go there, I'm going to start promoting this a little bit now. Nathan, guess what?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. He had to go running to the mic. I just love doing that.
Actually, it's running from my headphones, but yeah.
Guess what happens in late April?
What happens in late April? I know Easter is involved, but I'm not sure when Easter is.
Well, there's a radio show that's going to, a brand new radio show that's going to be on Kixie.
Ooh, brand new radio show. Always
It's
nice to get new radio shows in our stations.
But it's not a new radio show. It's my show. And we're adding an hour on Kixie Light, 3:00 on Friday. And this is going to be late April. I just had to say that. I'm so excited about it.
Do you have an idea which week, or is that still to be determined? Do you have a time slot? Anything else you want to share?
It's 3:00 on Fridays. It's Friday afternoons.
Okay.
So it's drive time on Friday, but I think it starts April 20th or 27th, right around in there.
Yeah. So you said it's on Fridays.
It's going to
be the 21st or the 28th.
28th, I believe. Well, it might be the 21st. I really should, write this stuff down before I start talking about it. I know. So,
well, if you hear a bunch of dead air, then Kevin got the wrong date.
Exactly. So Andrea Moore is with us, and my granddaughter. Can I talk to you about my poor granddaughter?
Absolutely.
She is she has sleep problems. She didn't sleep through the night. She stays up till 2:00 in the morning, and before she's willing to fall asleep. And so when they had her tested, and they've discovered that, and I'm not even sure I know exactly what this means. And I think I'm not alone in this. They said, well, it appears that she's on the spectrum. I don't even know what that exactly means. Do you know do you have any experience with autistic children?
I absolutely do. So my kids are diagnosed on the spectrum or autistic. And one thing that's important to understand is it's a very wide spectrum of different clusters of traits to have that diagnosis. I do encounter a lot of sleep challenges with the neurodiverse population. It's that much harder to fall asleep. Sometimes with autistic children, it might be in relation to how their body produces melatonin or the amount of melatonin that their body produces. And sometimes it's just harder for them to process and deal with the feeling of being tired and to accept the boundary around going to sleep. So some of it absolutely with sleep can be behavioral. Some of it can be biological as well.
What does it matter if their body isn't producing melatonin very much?
Well, melatonin is something really helpful for sleep. Generally, we as humans produce our peak levels for the time that we fall asleep, and it assists us in falling asleep and staying asleep for about the first 2/3 of the night. So if we don't have peak levels, it's just that much harder to fall asleep. There's one other chemical that helps us fall asleep. That's a chemical called adenosine, or sleep pressure. So that builds up in our body as the day goes on to be at peak levels by bedtime as well. When we have peak levels of sleep pressure that line up with peak levels of melatonin, that's like that magic combination that helps us fall asleep quickly.
Now, when you become an adult, you can supplement with things like, I don't know, beer or vodka or something like that that'll put you to sleep. But the sleep isn't really high quality when you do that sort of thing,
And
right?
they don't recommend that for children.
No, no, you could lose your kids if you use that. But now, can you supplement children with melatonin and that kind of thing? Do they recommend doing that? I have no idea.
Yes, that would be a conversation to have with a doctor, but usually we would want to try everything we can do before moving to that step, because supplementing with a synthetic melatonin isn't the same as what the body produces. So, and there isn't a lot of long-term research on the impacts of melatonin supplementation in little ones. So luckily, there is a lot that we can do to increase the body's ability to produce melatonin. And a lot of that is looking at a light dark routine. So many times, parents, out of their memories of being scared as an older child, will introduce a nightlight into a younger child's room or a baby's room, thinking, well, they're crying, they must be afraid of the dark. Little ones, babies are not born afraid of the dark. We're born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Other fears come along with the development of imagination, which kicks in around 2.5 to 3 years of age. So if it's in the first couple of years, it's not scared. It's likely that they're tired or they're going through some kind of development, busy brain period. But complete darkness, or as close to complete darkness, is the most ideal sleep environment that we can create.
So that includes, if it's, as an example, during the summertime when kids go to bed earlier than it gets dark, because it doesn't get dark till 8 or 9. Would you put shades on the windows and to make the room artificially darker?
Absolutely. Make it as dark as possible, blackout blinds. I even would put up foam boards behind, or cardboard behind the blackout blinds, because light still trickles in around the corners. When you put up the foam board or completely black it out, it does really make a difference. And one thing we probably don't want to tell our kids is, oh, it's bedtime when it's dark out, because then they can use that against us in the summer hours. No, it's bedtime when the clock says 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever that magic time is.
Now, as a sleep coach, do you recommend having a set bedtime?
I recommend having a consistent bedtime. So usually we would want it to fall within about a half an hour window night by night. And that when the body is accustomed to being in darkness around a fairly consistent time each night and falling asleep around that time, our body will start to produce more consistently high levels of melatonin for that time.
So that's a good thing, and consistency is a good thing. Now, what happens? How would you handle this? My granddaughter. Hold on just a second. Excuse me. My granddaughter will go to school. They'll get her up at 8 o'clock in the morning. She'll go to school till noon. Then they'll go have lunch, and then she'll fall asleep in the car seat on the way home. And then mom's tired, so mom goes to takes a nap, and baby doesn't get up till 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then doesn't want to go to bed at night. How would you fix that? What would you suggest that they do?
Yeah, so that's a hard one, because sometimes we get into these patterns where out of survival, we're going to let them nap because they're quiet and it gives us a break and a bit of that mental rest, or maybe a nap ourselves. So we do it, but then they release sleep pressure in the middle of the daytime, which means come nighttime, they have not yet built up that peak amount of sleep pressure till midnight. So now we have a child who's napping late, releasing all that sleep pressure, can't fall asleep until midnight. Then we have to get them up early in the morning. They've only had 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep instead of at 4. usually want, if they're still napping, we would probably want 9 to 10 hours of night sleep. A lot of kids aren't napping at 4, and then we'd want to see it closer to 10, maybe 11 hours of sleep at night.
That's because she is so darn tired after school
Mm-hmm.
that she just naturally falls asleep. But then it's a self-repeating pattern, because then she's not tired when it's midnight, 1 o'clock, even to 2 o'clock in the morning. And so how do they break that cycle?
Yeah, so sometimes it can be a hard cycle to break because we're in survival mode at that point. And by that point in parenting, we are tired. They have worn us down. So usually what I would do is I would try to drastically shorten the nap, keep it to hopefully no longer than 20, 25 minutes. When we keep the nap shorter, they go through a lighter part of the sleep cycle, but they don't go into the deeper, more restorative sleep, which releases more sleep pressure and can push bedtime significantly later. So a 20, 25-minute nap might bring bedtime to maybe 9 or 10 o'clock instead of midnight. So not our end goal, but it's an improvement. We let them adjust to that. Over a week or so, their body will start producing higher levels of melatonin after 1 to 2 weeks of the earlier bedtime, the earlier time being exposed to darkness. And then after that week or two, now we're getting maybe 8 or 9, maybe 10 hours of sleep at night. Then we can hopefully remove that nap.
Well, you just said probably the most significant thing, and tell me if this is what you meant to say, is that part of it rests with mom's ability to regulate that and not to have enough self-control to not then go to sleep for 3 hours herself while the baby is sleeping. So she needs to stay up and to regulate the child's sleep so that they can redo that and refix that pattern. Is that what I heard?
That is part of it. And if we're at that level of depletion, which I have absolutely been there, it's seeing, do we have anyone who could come in and keep my child awake while I still go have that nap just to get through this rough patch? And then having a plan in place, because making those changes without knowing how it's going to get better, seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, we're not going to just sign up for less sleep without knowing it's going to get better, but having some guidance or knowing this is a solid plan. I'm doing this for this many days. This is the progress I should expect to see. And then we make the next step. Sometimes having the solid plan helps give us the motivation to push through the rough patch.
So just to say, well, I don't know why she's staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning. She had a 4-hour nap, but I guess that's, I do a lot of parents not put two and two together?
I think some do, but again, we get to that point of depletion and exhaustion where we kind of know what we're doing might not be helping, but we're just so tired. If we have an opportunity to get that sleep, we would almost sell our kidneys for an extra hour of sleep.
Well, gee whiz, that is extreme. But I understand, and it would be very helpful then if she had like a girlfriend or her mother. They live in England and they're on an Air Force base, and so they just need to have a friend who can come over and watch the child and play with her, so that she doesn't necessarily fall asleep in the middle of the day, so that she can then fall asleep at night, which is what she's going to have to do, because next year it's 8 hours of school. And so it's going to become even more difficult and more difficult.
Well,
So,
absolutely. Or even if she knew she had a solid plan going in, I'm going to do this for this week, knowing it's shorter term can be helpful to push through. Sometimes when we're just treading water and just trying to survive, it's really hard to make those steps.
well, there you said it again. You got to have a plan. And a lot of people don't plan for those eventualities.
No, I don't think anybody expects to still be tired after 4 years of parenting. We understand that it's going to be rough in the newborn phase, but then we expect to sleep again at some point. And some kids figure it out on their own. Some babies will just start sleeping longer stretches, and some don't for a very long time or until parents make some shifts.
And I hesitate to even ask this question, but it's relevant. And that is, so if should you or do you, as a sleep coach, look to the behavior of the parents and also the stress level within the house? And because my youngest son, they had a dog move out because the stress level was high. So do you look at that as well? Because it's a holistic approach that you take, right?
Absolutely. So I look at everything, and I don't blame a parent for being where they are or not knowing what they don't know. I was there too, where I wasn't making the best decisions because I lacked knowledge about baby sleep. Sometimes we take what we know about adult sleep and try to apply it to these little people where it's just not relevant. But yes, we talk a lot about what creates a foundation for great sleep. A lot of it is understanding sleep cues, understanding normal expectations. We all have friends whose little ones slept, 8 hours from birth, and then we expect our babies to do it. So understanding that that's not the norm. And if we are outside the norm, how do we get there?
A lot of people will say that it's like everybody tells me their baby slept for 8 hours and it was fine, and I can't get 2 hours of sleep myself. So do you feel? I imagine you feel inadequate, and you're not a very good parent if that's not happening. But it may not have anything to do with you.
That's like winning the lottery. It's not an expectation to have a newborn that comes out sleeping that long. Some do. I've met people who have those babies. I've never personally experienced one. I did have one friend who her little one was 5 weeks older than my little guy. And at a very young age, he'd be in a little bucket car seat in the living room, and she'd just rub something soft on his cheek and he would just go to sleep. Like, what is that? Some kind of party trick? There's me with my baby screaming at me in my arms as I'm trying to like rock and sing and cuddle and get him to sleep for 2 to 4 hours a night. It was not an easy process.
Well, I admire you for doing this, and it impacted you so much that you are helping other people get through what you didn't have any coaching to get through.
Well, I wanted to give people an alternative to cry it out. When my little guy was 5 months, he cried for the first 5 months of his life because of the fractured clavicle and reflux, and he wasn't sleeping. And at 5 months, my doctor said, okay, well, once he's 6 months, you can just let him cry. I was like, it took me 5 months to get this baby to stop crying. I'm still traumatized from the 5 months of crying. I still go into a panic attack hearing somebody else's baby cry. Like, I can't do that. But I didn't know that there were any alternatives to just letting your baby cry, because nobody's out there saying that. They're in between ways. We can support our babies with big emotions. So I thought I either had to suffer or let him cry, and neither was really sustainable. And after I did my training to become a gentle sleep coach and found that middle zone where, yes, we can still offer support through this process, I saw my doctor for another checkup, and she says, oh, so what's the secret? How do you get babies to sleep? So she had just been giving advice that had been passed down from her parents. Most doctors, actually less than 18% of doctors, have formal education on pediatric sleep.
I found that there are lots of areas where doctors just don't get much training. Nutrition is one of them. Sleep is another, and pediatric sleep. Unless you're a pediatrician, now pediatricians, I gotta think, have got a better clue than most doctors. Or am I? Is that not quite right?
They're not necessarily trained in behavioral strategies to improve sleep with babies. Even our pediatrician said, just let him cry.
So
And
that,
family doctor.
that had to be a very frustrating piece of advice to get from your family doctor.
Well, it was frustrating because with my background in psychology, I understand the importance of building and protecting attachment, especially in the first few years of life. And we do that by responding to our babies, not by shutting the door, walking away, coming back in the morning. That just did not make sense. But the thing with attachment, we build and protect attachment by responding. It's not necessarily about fixing. We can still set boundaries. We can say, no, we're not going to do this right now, or we're not going to do it quite your way. And there can be emotions around that, and we can offer comfort and support through whatever frustration comes up without necessarily changing the boundary. And we still protect attachment by that response.
It's interesting because we think, I thought before I had kids, that when you're a month old, 2 months old, 3 months old, that you really don't have a thought, that you really aren't really, but they still go through frustration. They go through, they're hungry and nobody's feeding them. They're wet and nobody's fixing it, and all of those things. And they still go through all of that, don't they?
Not in the first few months. In the first few months, wants and needs and frustration and the light is too bright and it's bothering me, or there's too much noise, that all can put them into a bit of overwhelm or crying, and it's not as distinct. But once we get past the 4-month developmental leap that all babies go through, it's often termed the 4-month sleep regression. No such thing as a sleep regression. There's just a lot going on in their brains at that time. But we start to see more distinct emotions starting to emerge. And we especially see that from 6 months onwards, where frustration is different than being really tired or having a wet diaper or wanting to reach something that's a little bit too far away and not being able to do it. They start to have different sounds and different cries, and they start to, they differentiate between emotions from about 6 months onwards.
So this is a whole, I don't think that there's enough information out there about what you've been talking about here. And I think it's great that you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you. And I don't think there's enough information out there either. And that's why I do have a public Facebook group. It's called Gentle Sleep Solutions for Babies and Children. But I offer lots of live Q&As. I have hours and hours of pre-recorded videos on the different types of emotions and the types of body language to look out for and how to read our baby's body language, to know when do we support and cheer them on. Like, I'm with you. This is tired. Kind of sucks, but we've got this. You're not alone. Versus, okay, danger zone. My baby's not regulating. I need to intervene and bring them back to calm because they've gone beyond their own ability.
That's impressive that you understand that and can teach it to other folks, and you do that willingly, and I think that's great. Because everybody needs to sleep, and there's nothing more frustrating than and sadly, the frustration that a parent feels can sometimes turn to anger, and that's where the shaking baby syndrome comes from, and some of those things that can be very, very destructive. So it's great that parents have got a place that they can go so that they don't get to that point, I hope.
Oh, absolutely. And I can empathize when my younger two, who would scream in my arms at me for 2 to 4 hours a night at bedtime, I knew in my head they weren't giving me a hard time. They were having a hard time, but everything in my body just wanted to put them in the crib, slam the door, and like run away. It was so overwhelming to deal with. And what's usually under anger is intense frustration or one of our own needs not being met. And that can erupt. And we don't want parents to get to that place. And there's so many things that we can do to help babies sleep so that parents don't have to face that.
Well, I think it's wonderful that your entire career has been about helping people. And that is so cool, working with the boys and girls clubs and doing what you did, and your education and stuff. So congratulations. I think it's great work that you're doing. And go to blissfulnights.ca and you can find out all about Andrea. And her name is Andrea Moore. She's a gentle sleep coach. She can help you get back to some sort of normalcy in your life with your infant. At least you'll understand why they're doing what they're doing, right?
Exactly. Sometimes it's just knowing that helps us stay calm, because then we know it's going to pass as well.
Just got about a minute and a half left. I'm going to set myself aside, and I'd like you to tell our audience anything that you would like them to know, the ones that are listening now or the ones on the podcast and elsewhere.
What I really want parents to know is that their intuition is the greatest gift and tool that they have through parenthood. They know their baby best. So if they're given advice to do pretty much anything in parenthood, including letting your baby just cry, and it doesn't feel right, tap into that, listen to it. You are your child's biggest advocate. You know them better than anyone else on the planet. I never pretend to know a baby better than their parents do. I know sleep, but I like to combine what I know about sleep, combine that with their intuitive knowledge of their baby, and that's how we get them sleeping.
And I'll bet you oftentimes they say, yep, that's exactly what's going on.
I do get that.
I figured you did. But you also get, thank you, Andrea. You've given this hope that this too will end.
Absolutely. And I try to empower parents to understand why they're doing what they're doing, why we're making the decisions we're making in coaching, so that they can take that knowledge and apply it down the road.
Because there is nothing when it doesn't look like there's going to be an end to it and you're tired and you get to look forward to being tired for what appears to be the rest of your life. It makes it tough. Andrea Moore, thank you so much for being here. blissfulnights.ca. Go there, talk to her. She can help. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. We'll be back Monday at 3. And by the way, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. We'll see you again. Take care.